the rights until 2036. So if you're going to leave the ACC before 2036, it's going to cost you millions and millions and millions of dollars.
But have all those schools signed that deal yet? Because I know they just came up with it.
No, it's been around.
Okay.
So the only way I don't think the ACC will go away. And we talked about this last week, Rusty. I don't know if you watched or not, but if Notre Dame becomes non-independent, they have to join the ACC unless they want to pay
that will help.
millions and millions and millions of dollars, because they're members in every other sport, except football.
Yeah, that will help the ACC having Notre Dame, because really, your two teams, to me, this year, your two teams that'll probably come out and go into, unless they're in the same division, is Miami and Clemson. To me, Miami, since Cristobal came into Miami, I think Miami's going to be a whole different football team.
Could be.
And they're going to play like they did with Schnellenberger, Jimmy Johnson, and Erickson.
Well,
I think he's going to do.
They won 5 of their last 6 games with Tyler Van Dyke as the quarterback. So we'll get into the teams here in a bit.
But I mean, the ACC having Notre Dame will help.
I think it would help.
Just for the mystique of Notre Dame will help.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, their national contract with NBC is huge. So
let me ask you this, and this is kind of something I probably should wait for another couple conferences to discuss, but asking where it goes and how it goes from here. The ACC currently has 15 football teams. Mm-hmm. So they're right in the mix with where SEC has 16 and the Big Ten has 16. With Notre Dame, I saw something on the Big Ten's television package that it's probably going to be $1 billion a year.
Yeah.
So if it's $1 billion a year, don't you think that they're going to pay to have Notre Dame leave the ACC and join the conference
that they want to, probably the Big Ten?
That is in their neighborhood against their biggest rival from the West Coast, USC.
I would agree with that. I again, who knows what this shift is going to be every day. It changes every day. I mean, I never saw USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten.
Dumbest
ever.
thing I've ever
Still
heard
can't
of.
believe it. So then we'll go down to the Big 12. We know they're going to lose Texas and Oklahoma next year. And they're also going to gain Cincinnati and Houston and UCF and one other one. I can't think of who it is. But they're going to have 4 teams join the Big 12. So I don't see them going away.
But the Big 12 will be down to 8 teams once Texas and Oklahoma leave. So those
because the other 4 are coming back.
Those other 3 additions that you just talked about bring them back up to 11 or possibly 12.
Yeah, there's actually 4. I just can't remember who the other one is.
The teams that are coming in are probably better than the 2 leaving. So,
I don't know about that, but we'll see.
I will say this. When I was looking at some things, I've got a team that I'm going to blame all this crap on. You know, who in the heck would ever have 2 left coast teams join the Big Ten and everything else? Well, who was the first team that ever joined a conference that you knew just did not make sense on a map? West Virginia.
Yeah,
West Virginia left their little hideaway and they went out to the Big 12, and you're like, what is this? This doesn't make any sense.
And they've been terrible ever since.
And they were pretty good beforehand.
They were more of an independent, really.
Well, you know, they were a Big East team, but you know, they had their football, and Big East didn't have football, to the same level. But you know, they're the original boundary breakers.
The boundary breakers of West Virginia. So like we just said a minute ago, this shuffle of conferences is not going to end until somebody makes some decisions about how many teams can be in the league. I mean, we're going to wind up with 3 20-team leagues and that's it? I don't think so. I think it's going to settle at 4, which is I don't think the ACC is going to go away. I said at least for the next 14 years. I could be wrong, but I think this grant of rights or whatever it is pretty solid from what I've read.
The Magna Carta has been passed.
The Magna Carta of the ACC, yeah. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think there's still some good teams in the ACC. There's some great quarterback play that's going to be in the ACC this year, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But
Rusty can't wait to hear about all those people.
Rusty can't wait to get. Rusty can always tell you right now, nobody's any good. Nobody's any good.
Well,
nobody's any good.
I mean,
Georgia's good, but nobody else is any good.
Well, that is true. Anyway, you were speaking the truth, brother. But I mean, I was sitting here thinking about this, and I'm thinking, you had Maryland go to the Big Ten. Maryland was very competitive in the ACC. Had a great coach that went to Georgia Tech and won a national championship.
Big boy.
But I think they've been to the Big Ten. Have they even shown up?
No.
No. Bad mistake. Just like, to me, UCLA and USC. They can't even compete in the Pac-12. How in the world are they going to compete in the Big Ten?
They're not going to, and as we've discussed,
I don't care if the Oklahoma coach goes to USC. He's bad.
Well, it's a good thing you don't care because he's already there.
Yeah, 'cause
the
he's there.
Oklahoma guy was bad at Oklahoma. He's going to be just as worse at USC.
And we haven't touched it on this show today, but once again, it's not about the basketball and the football. Those are the generating.
Right.
It's women's volleyball.
Yeah.
Women's volleyball now has to. The girls from West Lafayette, the Purdue Boilermakers, have to go to L.A. a
the
couple
beach
times.
of LA,
I'm
yeah.
sure they're not complaining a whole bunch about it,
No.
but it's a lot of extra money when it comes to wrestling.
But the
and
people going the
bowling.
other way may be complaining to go into the freezing of Purdue.
Oh, absolutely.
And,
There's a lot of Southern California kids who have never seen a game quite like
when
that.
it gets October and September and October, when you got a foot of snow in Purdue, they're going to think, we never should have left.
It's not the same as Washington's winter.
No, it's not. Well, typically at this time we interview somebody from Red Hair, but they must be all busy somewhere. So we
They're
want to
partying.
We want to thank Red Hair for their hospitality. We've been here since March or April or sometime broadcasting every week, other than the couple of times we've been at Dogwood Golf Club. Not Dogwood Country Club, Dogwood Golf Club. And we certainly appreciate Molly and Michael, who is now gone, and Gabby for giving us this position, give us the opportunity to grow our show, which has been happening on a weekly basis, and we're very happy to be here. Next week, we'll be back out at Dogwood Golf Club for a final trip out there. And then beyond that, we will be at Miller's Ale House on Chastain Road because we will be starting a second show on August 17th, all about the KSU Owls. So we're very excited about that. Speaking of the KSU Owls, they're going to have a pretty good football team. I know Xavier Shepard is the ASUN Player of the Year, and we haven't even
Preseason
started
Player of the
yet.
Year.
And we haven't even
Absolutely.
started yet. There's four other offensive guys, a couple of linemen, and I think and a wide receiver that are also on the all-conference team. But speaking of conferences, let's get back into our conference conversations. And who are going to win the conferences this year? And it's so funny. My favorite thing about college football, my favorite thing is
Probably not his favorite.
the controversy of college football. I think that's what makes it great. I mean, sitting here with Rusty and arguing about Georgia and about anything, that's what makes college football fun.
It is.
I mean, it really is. Everybody's got an opinion, and everybody's entitled to one.
And it's always better in August.
Absolutely.
Because
because
some people have to shut up come October, but come August, everybody's undefeated.
And that's why we're talking about college football today. So, again, let's start out at Pac-12. Utah was the winner last year. I think they're going to win the South again. They have what I think is probably the coolest quarterback name in the country. You know what his name is?
I do not.
Cameron Rising. So I think that's a pretty cool quarterback name. So he's rising to his potential in Utah.
I just have a question for you, Chuck. We were going through each conference, and you did not talk about the Big Ten or the SEC, and now you're already back at predicting something. Were you
We
doing that
talked
on
about the
purpose?
SEC a little bit.
Okay.
We'll get into that. We did talk
I'm
about
good.
the Big Ten. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We'll get to that as we talk about the Big Ten. All right? All right.
Check the video.
Well, you checked the video about we saying we're going to start with baseball because I told you 5 minutes before that we were.
We don't have that on video.
Yeah. All right. So Pac-12. Like I said, I think Utah is going to repeat out there. I think Oregon is also going to repeat. But I also think, much to Rusty's chagrin, I think USC is going to be a pretty good football team. They were 4-8 last year, but now they have Caleb Williams. They have a very good coach in Lincoln Riley. I don't know why Rusty thinks he's not a good coach, but he did some pretty incredible things at Oklahoma. He did take him to the playoffs. He did have a couple of Heisman Trophy winners.
And he lost every time he went to the playoffs.
Well,
every time.
There's only one team that wins all of it, Rusty. Everybody can't win every game.
understand.
So I think Utah and Oregon again, and I know Oregon lost a lot of people. Number one, their head coach, Mario Cristobal, went to Miami. But I think it's going to be a pretty good conference. Oregon State may push a little bit in the
I
north.
always root for the Beavers.
Yeah. Well, sad about Tony Dow and the Beaver, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Tony Dow.
They're
passed away.
they're
Yeah.
terrible. Oh, Oregon State.
Yeah, who's not terrible, Russ? But I think I'm going to pick Oregon and Utah playing and Utah repeating in the Pac-12.
I think Oregon's a great team. I think Oregon has such a difficult schedule where they go out and they find these East Coast guys to pick a fight with. This year it's Georgia.
First game's Georgia, right?
So right out of the chute, you got possibly the best team on the left coast is going to be 0-1, and they have to do everything right after that to even have a chance to make it to the end. I think Oregon will take the conference, though.
They are a heavy favorite, and they have a favorable schedule. Actually, they don't play USC, and they play the South opponents, UCLA and Utah, at home. So they don't have a horrible schedule. Not having USC is a plus. Like I said, I think they're going to be better. So we'll see what happens.
And also, I'm a firm believer, if you go and get in a fight, and it's the biggest, baddest guy you're ever going to see in week one, and then your next fight you show up, you're like, well, that guy isn't really that tough.
Well,
and I think that'll be the case for
Well, wasn't
Oregon.
it last year that Oregon started against Auburn?
No, that was a couple years ago.
Was
Wasn't
that
it
2 years
Ohio
ago?
State last
that's
year?
right, Oregon and Ohio State.
And
They beat Ohio
they
State
beat
last
Ohio
year.
State in the
And they
horseshoe.
should have beaten Auburn 2 years ago, and they
That's
didn't.
correct. That's correct.
Yeah,
They pick big fights, but they usually show up for
Yeah.
at least the
But
early
just
games.
realize who the head football coach of Oregon is. Who is that guy? He was the former defensive coordinator at Georgia. Who's the other defensive coordinator that actually turned the program around? Wouldn't that be Michigan State? So, defensive coordinators going to big schools tend to have a good, but we're going to spank that Fanny the first weekend, and we're going to actually show the left coast how to play football to make sure when they do come to the Big Ten, they can actually play football. But I don't know. I mean, I like Washington. Some tells me there's going to be a surprise out of there. Could be an Arizona. Could be a Stanford. Who knows? I don't think if Stanford does any good, I think you're going to see that head coach finally lose his job.
Lose his job and lose a conference.
Yeah, and he is, and he's he's been there for a while
He's been
and
there a
done
while.
very well, but he's just on that where he can't.
I can't
really
remember
get out
the
of
guy's
his own
name, but
way.
it's
I
the
can't
black guy
either.
who took over after
Yeah,
Harbaugh.
yeah,
Very
he's
nice guy.
really did good.
Really nice guy, and he's
Did
been really
a
good.
Very good job, but you just never know. With,
Stanford's always like a
Yeah.
player away.
Yeah, you're right, and you just never know. So I'm thinking, Oregon will probably be there, so will Washington, but I think you never know about the others, the Arizonas, the Arizona States, the Stanfords. You just,
That's
all
why
you
they
gotta
call it
do is
college football.
Absolutely, you just got to have a couple of lucky streaks, and a lot of winning national championships and conferences is all about luck. And
Yep.
if the ball falls your way, you might win that game.
Going back to Lincoln Riley at USC, last year his team in Oklahoma scored 322 points, but the defense gave up 252. What that team needs is for him to find somebody who he believes in, trusts,
exactly.
and says, I'm never going to look over on this side of the ball again, but I need you to do a lot better, because he has just never had
Right,
that.
and that's
I would
his
agree
track
with that.
record, though.
Yeah.
That's his track record of great offense will score 60 points, but he can't have a defense to let them
But if
score
Baylor
65.
scores 62, it doesn't
I mean,
matter.
62. I mean, it's like when they played Georgia in the Rose Bowl, I thought they were
Great
going to
game.
win. Everybody thought they were going to win. But, I mean, their defense was terrible. That's
Correct.
what lost their game is the defense.
Well, Georgia, they gave up a lot of points
Yeah, it
too,
was,
and
it was
Georgia
like
has a pretty good
50,
offense.
55, 50.
They did. They stopped them when they had to. Oklahoma couldn't. But that's what I'm looking for is USC is how good the defense is going to be. I could care less about the offense. He'll score enough points. It's stopping people is his problem.
Agreed.
All right. So let's move in back to the ACC. Clemson, are they coming back with DJU?
Clemson not only is going to come back, but all these conversations that some people like to have about the conference is gone probably won't be gone if they win a national title in the next 2 years.
Oh, I
And-
think I said ACC won't be gone until 36.
Well, no, but you still don't have any faith in them. I think Dabo's going to bring a little more street cred back to the conference in the next couple of years. I think that kid's phenomenal, and I think this year he's going to be really good.
TJU, I think he'll be back too. They lost Venables to Oklahoma as their head coach now, and their offense came. I went to Virginia. Is that right? Terry
Yeah,
Allen.
he did.
Is that where he went?
did.
Yeah. So they've got to rebuild, but Dabo, just like he was promoted from within, he's promoted these guys from within, and I don't see that much of a change when you do that. When he was under Venables before, he's going to know what's going on. And when the other guy was under whoever the offense, Terry Allen, he's going to know what's going on. So I think Clemson is back. I think they'll win. I think they're coastal. Is that right? I think they're coastal. And I think, as Rusty said earlier, I think Miami's going to win the East or the Atlantic Division, whichever one they're in. Miami is a good football team. Tyler Van Dyke is a good quarterback. I think Mario Cristobal in there, and he's more of a defensive coach than an offensive coach, right? Because they had Thibodeau and everybody in Oklahoma, and they stopped some people. So if I had to pick right now the ACC, I'd say Clemson over Miami for the championship.
Not so fast there, Chuck.
I mean,
Gee,
y'all
how did I have a feeling that was coming?
Y'all were giving way too much credit to Clemson. I mean, really? I mean, you're giving way too. They may win.
Are you going Wake Forest?
Well, no, I'm not. I mean, when driving here, my two teams were Clemson and Miami in the ACC. But you're giving way too much credit to.
You're talking about somebody that's been in the
Clemson.
college playoff for 6 straight years.
Yeah, but the thing about it
Minus
is when you lose a I don't care if that dude studied under him. When you lose a coordinator like Venables that has pretty much kept Clemson in football games they shouldn't been in because of the way he coached.
Well, I got to.
That's going to be a problem for Clemson. Is they're not going to have that guy that's going to have that type of attitude to get that defense in. Georgia should have blown them out, but with Venables as defensive coordinator, we barely won that game.
That was
barely
an ugly
won
game.
that
I got a question.
Barely
for you.
won that
I got a
game.
question for you, Rusty. What's the guy's name that left Georgia to go to Michigan State?
Whatever his name is.
And
I
how
can't-
much did that hurt the Georgia defense?
Not that much.
There-
But we
that's
had,
my
we had a
case.
good, but we had. But I'm saying though, Venables is a different coordinator.
Well,
different coordinator.
and he also could have left a few years ago, so he has been there
Right.
longer than a lot. So hopefully somebody's been watching
I
him
don't
really
think
close.
he's going to be as a good head coach as he was an assistant, but he kept Clemson in a lot more games than people give him credit to. I think Clemson's going to suffer this year. They may not the following year, but they're going to suffer a little bit this year.
And
I'm writing it down, Rusty.
he's putting your quotes down. I'll say this. As far as Venables goes, he probably won't be as good of a head coach as he was a defensive coordinator, but he might have been one of the best defensive coordinators. When you look at his track
Yeah.
record for that
Yeah.
little spot in time, well, it's going to be
Yeah.
kind of hard to
Well, I
call
think-
all the shots and run it
Right.
better than
I
that.
think he was the highest paid
Oh, he was.
He was.
defensive
was.
coordinator in the country.
He really was. He was great. But I think Clemson may win it. But I think they're going to struggle. I think they're going to struggle a lot because they're just not going to. I mean, sometimes when you lose I look at it this way: when Dooley with Irk Russell was really, really good. When he lost Irk Russell, that defense fell off a
Luckily,
little
he
bit.
got Herschel.
Yeah, but Herschel.
Well, again, but we're not talking Georgia football on
but I'm just saying
every question.
assistant.
Rusty.
I mean, the assistants, though, when you lose
It's
an
what the
assistant like
fans
that.
understand. He's doing
Yeah.
Georgia analogies for
Yeah,
him.
Jeez.
when you lose assistants like that, you necessarily
But
you're
it
not
didn't
as good
happen
as
to
you
Georgia when they went to Michigan State. So
And-
you're contradicting yourself.
But I'll say this one more thing for Clemson. Whenever you look, and I don't put a lot of stock in what somebody else tells me a college did for drafting high school prospects. But
You never know.
But you never know, and usually it's a bunch of the same teams. How many ACC teams are ever on that list?
They're terrible. No.
So even though you
yeah.
don't know anything about anything else, you still know that they're out recruiting every other person in that conference. So
And-
the wide receivers
and I
will be
will tell you
there, the
this.
defensive linemen will be there, Clemson will be there.
If I had almost every coach in the country talking to my 5-star son in my house, I'd want him to play for Dabo. I think Dabo's great. All right, let's move on to the Big 12, where they don't have conferences. They're just the two best teams in the league play.
That's because they only have 6 teams.
Or close to it, yeah. So Baylor, who won last year, I think will also repeat. I think Baylor's a good football team. I don't know what Oklahoma's going to do. Oklahoma State, I think Mike Gundy, finally, he's always had a good offensive team, and he's got a pretty strong defense this year. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say Baylor and Oklahoma State play in the Big 12 championship with Baylor winning again.
Well, being that Oklahoma State went 8-1 or 12-2 last year, and Baylor went 12-2, I'm not really sure what ledge Chuck is walking out on when he makes this prediction.
I don't think it's much of a ledge, well, other than Oklahoma not winning the West, being the top 2 teams.
I agree with you. I think those are the 2 best teams.
Yeah, but I wouldn't. Yeah,
I hate to give you a sleeper. Are you ready for this? Kansas Jayhawks.
Rock'em sock'em, no freaking way. However much you'd like to.
I mean,
Watch
I
the
don't know
Jayhawks.
what dream world. You must have watched too much Stranger Things. Your upside down world
Watch
is
the
now on
Jayhawks.
top.
That's all I'm
Come on.
telling you.
Wow.
Okay.
All I can tell you is that
I'm going to watch them lose every game this year.
Hey, Rusty, you want to make a bet right now that Kansas wins every game? I'll bet you $1,000 that Kansas doesn't lose every football game.
I'll tell you this. Back when I was more of a degenerate than I currently am.
That's impossible.
And I know. You would think so, but I got a couple people who could testify to that one. I can remember putting a little wager on a Saturday afternoon, and I can remember giving the Jayhawks in back-to-back weeks over 55 points. And, who else does that?
Did
That's
they cover?
They did not cover either game. They lost both games by over 55. And this is a Power 5 conference. Now, yes, they are basketball elite. They're
Yes.
one of the top 5 teams. But you shouldn't be able to be that good unless you're like UConn. UConn, you can look at and go, it's too small of a school to be competitive in the other. But it's really sad what Kansas does. But you're wrong. They'll stink again.
There you go.
I'm going to write that down.
That's
with
my,
Please do.
hey,
Please
that's
do.
my
Kansas
boy
will
right
not
there.
stink.
That's my
Okay.
boy right there.
All right, let's move up to the Big 10. Oh, so everybody's. I'm saying Baylor, Oklahoma,
I agree.
or Baylor,
Yeah,
Oklahoma
I agree with
State.
that.
You agree with
And
that?
I think Oklahoma State's going to win it.
I do
Okay.
too.
Yeah.
I
All
do
right.
too.
They'll beat Baylor this year.
All right. Well, we'll see. Big 10, up to the big boys.
Are they really?
I think so. Yeah, I think overall they're the best conference.
You got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
He doesn't hate the SEC.
Well,
or
Rusty, what do you
anything.
know? Because according to you, everybody's terrible. But Michigan got the best of Ohio State last year. I think that's done.
Yeah, you're right.
I think
You're
Ohio
right.
State is back with C.J. Stroud at the quarterback. They still got a couple of receivers. I think 3 of them from last year. I could name them if I had to. Injun Smith and Marvin Harrison Jr. and there's one other one. I think they're going to be good on offense, but I think they're going to make a step forward on defense as well. So I know Michigan lost a lot of players. They got a lot of holes to fill. I was happy to see them beat Ohio State once because I'm not a Harbaugh hater, but I'm not his biggest fan. But he's
I love
okay.
those khakis.
Yeah.
I think
So-
he's going to be gone in the next 2 years.
Well, that was gonna be my question for you. Right after the season ended, he was aggressively looking for a possible professional
Yes,
job.
he was.
I
and
remember
he
that.
did not get it.
Right.
So at the end of the day, if you're from Ann Arbor, you finally beat your nemesis, and then your coach tries to jump ship and nobody bit.
Right.
So now all of a sudden, do you feel like you're stuck with him if you're Ann Arbor, or do you feel like he's still the Messiah and he's still going to take them khakis all the way to the promised land?
Can I say something that I think I'd
Please.
never say in my life? I agree with Rusty. I think in 2 years
I've done it.
Harbaugh
It's
will be
taken me.
gone.
It's taken me a while, but
Yeah.
I think this they'll give him this year since he beat Ohio State. That's my thing. Is he
Yeah.
beat Ohio State, he's going to have a bad year because they pretty much lost everybody almost.
Yeah.
There's going to be a few come back, but they lost a lot of good people. They'll give him a break here, but then the very next year when he looks bad again, he's gone.
Okay.
And what did you say to start the whole thing about the Big Ten, that Michigan had finally?
Beat Ohio State.
Well, but once again, it's one game.
Yeah.
They finally beat Ohio State one time.
One
So,
time.
yeah, I
totally
don't
agree.
see it repeating.
All right, so the East, we're all agree on Ohio State.
Yeah.
Let's look at the West. You guys have any thoughts on the West?
Iowa shows up and then usually doesn't whenever it counts. Minnesota, I remember seeing something
Golden Gophers.
like a month ago that they have an incredibly easy schedule as far as schedules go. But at the end of the day, this is the reason why all conferences should play in a single division instead of a two division, because when you look at the Big Ten, probably the three best teams are all on the same side.
Yeah, you're right.
That being Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State.
Penn State with, definitely an outlier compared to the other two,
Yeah.
but having
I don't
enough-
know, Michigan State.
Michigan State can do it occasionally.
Yeah. All right. Minnesota's a decent team. I actually have a friend that used to be starting tight end for the Golden Gophers, Scooter Bogus. Scooter Bogus.
I
What
like
a great
the
name.
Minnesota coach, though. He's a good coach.
Yeah. But I'm going to have to go with Wisconsin in the West.
On Wisconsin.
One of the greatest traditions in the world is when they play jump around at the end of the third quarter, and everybody's jumping. But, they had a great running back. Braylon Allen was a freshman last year, and he had I got some stats somewhere on him. He had some phenomenal yardage.
They've had phenomenal running backs the last 6-7
Taylor,
years.
Jonathan Taylor, who we both agree is probably the best running back in the pros. now.
And before that, Melvin Gordon.
Melvin Gordon, the third. Yep.
The-
And I watched a lot of Wisconsin football last year. I'm wearing this thing called the tub, which you pick.
Sorry.
Oh no! And they have a phenomenal defensive squad. And just when you think they're going to get ready to take the next step to be in the elite of college football, they have one bad game. I think they only lost 2 games last year, but they're enjoy watching them play. Graham, I can't remember his quarterback's name. He's a little light. He lost some receivers. He lost a tight end. But I think their defense is going to get them there. I love Braylon Allen. He's going to get a lot more carries this year than what he had last year. And while you guys debate that, I'm going to look up how many yards he had because I know I have it here.
I'll just say that Wisconsin always looks good. They always, as far as running, they can stop the run usually pretty well, and they can run the ball. But at the end of the day, and one of my favorite non-relatives who's still a relative, my aunt married him, is a Polish guy, a Laskowski. Hi, Laskowski family, if you're watching. My biggest problem with Wisconsin is there's way too many Polish people on that roster. Whenever you look at their lineups, you got Dabrowski and Chamovsky and everything else. They don't have those same huge people. When Ohio State sets up their offensive line, they get a kid out of Texas, a kid out of Georgia, a kid out of California. When you look at Wisconsin's, it's a kid from Green Bay and a kid from Madison and a kid from Milwaukee. They don't recruit well outside of their state. So
That's true. And Nebraska is the same way.
And obviously Minnesota
Yeah.
is the same
Minnesota,
way. Most
yeah.
of these schools are the same way.
Yeah, so I think Braylon Allen's going to carry them to the West. Obviously, I don't think they're going to beat Ohio State in the championship. I think Ohio State will take over there. So we move. Oh, and it's 1,109 yards. Braylon Allen had 12 touchdowns and averaged 7.1 yards a touch. That's pretty strong.
Well, just for an interesting prediction, does anybody believe Ohio State will go undefeated to the Final Four, or who will be their one game? Because Ohio State religiously looks awful the first 6 games of the year, and they usually sneak out a
That's how they got
Champaign.
beat. They got beat at home by Oregon, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
But that was a big game with a lot of stuff. The last few years, they're still having problem with Illinois or getting out of Purdue, West Lafayette. Do you think
One game has stopped them, and I think there will be their one. But I think they'll get in the playoffs this year.
I don't know. They may run through the Big Ten like knife through hot knife through butter. But yeah,
We'll look
I
more
don't
at their
see it.
schedules in a couple of
unless
weeks.
it's a team outside the big. Like
I
if
don't
they
think
play
there will be.
I don't know if they play like a
don't think they do.
SEC team or something. I think they'll go undefeated. I really do.
Okay. So let's move to the SEC, which you guys think is the cream of the crop. Do we need even to debate who we think who's going to win the East?
I'll start that. I think you're going to see Georgia and Alabama in the SEC championship again. But hey, to my Tennessee fans, I actually think, and I have heard this from I watch a lot of YouTube, and
YouTube
I
knows
think,
everything about
Well, I've got some guys I watch. I actually think Tennessee's going to be second in the East with 9 wins. Write that down. Tennessee, 9 wins. They'll go 9-3. I'm predicting 9-3. That will be the best record Tennessee's had probably since what? The head coach that got fired that went to Alabama that's now at another university that's not doing any good anyway. But yeah, so I do. I think Tennessee is going. No, not Former. He's the guy after Former. But
Jeremy Pruitt,
no, the guy before him.
Bill Battle,
You're talking about the guy who
Derek Dooley,
who went to USC and then became
Lane Kiffin.
No,
Kiffin.
no,
well,
no,
he
no,
was
no.
in that same thing.
And I'll think of him
We'll talk
after,
about it
after the
later.
show. But anyway, but I do. I think it's going to be Georgia again, and in the East, and I think it's going to be Alabama in the West. I think Texas A&M is going to have a lot to say about that.
Well, there's a big game in Tuscaloosa on October the 8th between.
Yeah. I think
that's going to be.
and
a
I
revenge
think it's
game
going to
for the
be
Tide.
payback. I think it's going to be
Yeah.
payback.
Oh my God! I'm agreeing with Rusty.
And I'm telling you,
shoot
it
me,
is
Larry.
going to be talking about a war. That'll be a
Are we
game
talking
to
about
watch.
A&M, folks?
Yeah.
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 Have you guys not, Chuck? I'm disappointed. Chuck's not been listening to me. That will not
What'd
be
you say?
Exactly. That will not be a war. Saban has already gotten under his skin, and when there's 3 minutes left in that game, the guy on the A&M sideline is going to be thinking to himself, I got to beat him. I got to do it to him. I got to do it. He was going to be thinking about beating Saban instead of what's going on the
On
field.
the field. I
Saban
agree.
has already handled that. And going back for just 1 second, you said that obviously we know who the best conference in football is. I want to ask you a question. Since
Who you think
2000,
is the best football game?
since 2005, when Vince Young won the national championship, how many teams not from the SEC has won a national title?
I'm not talking about they have the best teams. I'm saying across the conference, I think the Big Ten is better.
So
I
you're
think- I
basically
think the
just
Big
saying
Ten is-
Purdue's better than Mississippi State?
I think the Big Ten is deeper than the SEC.
So
That's
you're,
all I'm saying.
You're saying Purdue's better than Mississippi State, but
I don't know
outside
what
that, you're
level.
good?
How about better than Vanderbilt or better than Mississippi State or Missouri?
Well, I wouldn't take misery out of it.
They're pretty miserable. So, all right.
But
so
the answer
Rusty,
was only 4.
Once again, I want you to look at my notes, Rusty. Who did I say was second in the East?
You said Tennessee. which was
Tennessee.
good.
They averaged 39.3 games.
I do.
39.3.
I think if
So-
they can get their defense, they could go 10-2.
Yeah.
And if they
So
go
you-
10-2, they're losing to Alabama and Georgia. So,
You guys talked about Georgia and their schedule. Who do you think the toughest team on the Georgia schedule is?
On paper or in the Georgia mind?
Either way.
Going to Jacksonville is always trouble for this team. I don't care. I don't care if this team's 7-0 and rumbling in there. You know, we saw that 5-6 years ago where a horrible Florida team handed it off 56 times right up the middle. And
Yeah.
so-
This year, I think it's going to be Tennessee. I really do.
I think it's Oregon.
and
I
it
think
would-
they play their toughest game the first game of the year.
I don't think
That's
so. I
that's
don't
quite
think so.
possible.
I don't think so.
Yeah. All right.
I think
Well,
and don't be surprised. And I'm a Georgia fan. Got my Georgia on today. Wouldn't be surprised if they didn't come into Sanford Stadium and actually win a close one.
Well, they've done that before, not in the
That
distant
would not
past.
surprise
Either.
me.
One
I
scored
just
the last
think
touchdown.
he's gonna.
But here's Georgia's schedule after Oregon. They play Samford at South Carolina, Kent State. Come on, really? Kent State, Missouri School of the
Zips.
Blind, Auburn Amputee Tech. I mean, come on. Who does Georgia play other than Oregon? Maybe Florida. That's what I'm saying. So
Florida's
I
not
think
going to be
it-
that good. It'll be
And-
Tennessee.
And I think Alabama's going to be. I'll tell you right now, I think Alabama's going to run the table and win everything this year. Number one, they got a great running back now, Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, did you know that there was a Georgia receiver that transferred to Alabama?
He wasn't that good.
The
He
best
wasn't that
Georgia receiver who didn't graduate at the end of the year.
And
Yes.
he moved to Alabama, and they also got one from Louisville, I think. So that's where I was concerned about Bryce Young, was whether he was going to have any weapons to throw to. But it appears that he is. And he's got a lot of time. They've got a lot of time to work in that chemistry that they've had. Like Robert said earlier, college guys been at it since late May.
Because
and they're
we know
practicing all the
when
time.
Minchie and the other guy left, he had nothing. He had absolutely
No, that's what happened
nothing.
in the
Correct,
in
correct,
the-
because they hadn't played. But
Yeah.
his replacements have been now playing with him for the last 5 months, and whoever the backups are for Alabama, they're still probably better than most people's starters.
That's probably true.
I think it's pretty interesting, though, that both of us, or all three of us, are circling Ohio State and Alabama with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. Alabama losing to Georgia, they're not going to take it again. Ohio State not wanting to listen to Michigan. I think those are two scary teams coming into this year.
And this poses a question for me, but which always baffles me. When are we going to get some new blood in the college football players? I know Michigan got in for the first time last year, but are the fans in general up? It's Alabama, it's Clemson, it's Georgia, it's Ohio State every year.
It's very difficult for us to judge how the fans are feeling because we all live in this area,
Right.
Yeah.
and it's all these teams that keep.
I think the big deal with Alabama, I think when, and I've always said this, I think when Nick Saban finally just says, kind of like Bear Bryant did, it's just time for me to leave the university football team, and it's time for me to retire. I think when Nick Saban says that, and they can't find a Nick Saban 2, he's out there. You just got to find him. And if they don't find him, I think that's when you'll see Alabama kind of lose a lot. I really do.
And I agree with what you're saying on a certain level, except for the fact that it took 130 years of college football to find Nick Saban 1.
Yeah.
I don't think Nick Saban 2 is
or,
going to come.
Or if you're in the state of Alabama, it's Bear Bryant 2.
Well,
I think it started that way, but it's not anymore.
Well, Kirby just signed 10 years. Do you
Yeah.
think that he's Nick Saban too?
I think
He could be, but
Kirby still has a problem with the offensive side of
Yeah,
the ball.
he
The same
does.
way Lincoln Riley needs somebody on the defensive
Yep.
side to call the shots and take care of the thing. Somebody needs to be in that locker room who
Yep.
tells Kirby who the hell the quarterback
Yep,
is.
that's
Because
right.
if Kirby brings out Rudy again, no wide receivers are coming.
No.
You're not going to get quarterbacks. You're not going to get wide receivers. All of your recruits are going to be impacted if you don't start playing the best person. And
I'll be honest with you, I think that's why Arch Manning did not choose Georgia, simply for the fact of that he knew they were going to. They have an offense, and it's not the offense he's used to.
But
And that's
now
why he
he's
didn't go.
going to play in the SEC just like his
Yeah, and I mean he's
uncles.
going to get his bell rung at Texas. Now Texas isn't going to be that good either. But
yeah, if you're Arch Manning and you're looking at
Yeah.
the three of the
Yep.
four schools, this guy doesn't know how to handle that
Because
position.
one of the quarterbacks that is a backup, you got the three that are there. One of them, I'm predicting, if he doesn't get to play this year and he stays with Stetson Bennett all the way, I think one of them will leave after this year.
I think two of them will leave.
and you may be right.
If
you may be
Stetson
right.
Bennett,
I know one, but two, you may be right with two. You may be right with two.
it's a scary thing.
But I'm hoping, knock on wood, I'm saying it very low, but I'm hoping maybe Stetson Bennett gets hurt a little bit, and then
Just a little bit?
and just a little bit, kind of what happened to when Jake Fromm came in, gets hurt a little bit, and then the next guy comes in and does what Stetson Bennett did, and we never see Stetson Bennett again. Yeah, I don't want him to get real hurt real bad, but
Rusty, it's that Murray State fight song.
Hey, there
that
we
must
go.
mean that Steve Pearson's on the
There we
phone with
go.
us. Steve, how are you, buddy?
I'm living the dream, Charles.
What do you think about us having the Murray State fight song on this show now?
I did not hear that.
Oh, you didn't hear
I
it?
missed it.
We
Which
did.
one?
It was good.
The old gray mare ain't what she used to be, or
The actual fight song. Which one's it
hey,
called, Larry?
I still predict them to beat Kentucky though. I still do.
Okay.
they've never played Kentucky in the sport that matters.
No, he's still
to Murray.
he's still talking about the
In
fight-
basketball, my
basketball. Yeah. So
Well, you predicted that, but neither one of them beat those jokers from St. Peter's.
Neither one of them could make it to that
You're
game.
right. You're
Yeah.
right.
all right,
Well, we made it to that game, but we didn't make it.
That's true.
Yeah,
you did.
yeah.
That's true.
all right, Steve. I know
I
you're
did
not.
get interviewed. I got interviewed by a Lexington newscast when we were in Indianapolis before that game. And the guy said, "So what do you think of the upcoming potential matchup against Kentucky? And, how do you think Murray will do in that match?" And I said, "Well, first of all, we got to win against San Francisco, and they're pretty good." And I said, "And Kentucky has to win their game too." And the guy laughed at me, which was kind of funny. And they did. I don't really have a whole lot to add. I will say this: I am not. I didn't grow up down here. I am not an SEC lover. I'm married to a Kentucky fan, but I feel sorry for her, except in basketball, and then I feel sorry for everybody else. But Chuck, the Big Ten better top to bottom than
Yeah.
the SEC.
I believe it.
You've got Rutgers, Northwestern, Illinois,
You got
Indiana, Maryland,
You got.
Sparty, and Purdue.
You think
Thank you
Sparty's
for
a bad football
thank you
team?
for coming to my aid.
Well, I mean, Sparty's not real good. Would they beat Vanderbilt? Yes. Would they beat Mizzou? Yes.
Now I've got a.
South Carolina's pretty bad.
Did you see that in the coaches poll, Vanderbilt got one vote to win the SEC this year?
Well, did
That
you
guy's been
see
drunk
in
out
the
on-
media, Chuck, in the media guide, in the media day, Georgia Tech got one vote to win the ACC. So there's always that joker out there.
One drunk guy
That-
from Nashville, one drunk guy from Buckhead.
There you go.
Yeah, there's always, I agree. Vanderbilt's very bad. Mizzou's very bad. South Carolina's still bad. They're better than they were last year.
Well,
they
they
were
got
better
Spencer
than they have
Rattler
been. But
now. What are they going to do with Spencer Rattler?
part of that is, you're South Carolina. Part of being better is that's a discount down because you can't get a hell of a lot worse than they were.
Yep.
But the rest of the teams are competitive. Northwestern, Rutgers, Illinois,
That's
Indiana,
Whenever the
Maryland.
conversation always comes up from best top to bottom, who really cares top to bottom? Because the bottom feeders are all still just bottom feeders who need to get relegated to a new level at some point.
And Maryland hadn't
Well-
won since the ACC, so
Right. That's kind of that's where I am, and I'm not. Believe me, I've got the only tie I have. I did not grow up in SEC football.
Who was your team growing up?
Oh, I grew up in Southern Illinois, and we didn't really care
So Lukey?
because college football. Well, I went to Murray State, but I grew up 10 minutes from SIU.
Okay.
But anyway, and you guys don't understand. In the Midwest, down in Southern Illinois, they don't care about college football. There's not a close college football team. They don't care. I mean, who's been any good that's close to St. Louis, Missouri? And
Nobody.
St. Louis doesn't have a Division One football team.
Yep.
I mean, my gosh, I think Lindenwood University is the only 1AA team, and they're not quite 1AA yet. They've got to be reclassified for 2 years
Yeah.
because St. Louis U doesn't have a football team. Wash U is. I mean, they're just not. You've got the team in Columbia, but St. Louis doesn't have. St. Louis doesn't have. They're probably high school teams in St. Louis that would be the best team in St. Louis.
I agree there.
So there's no
Absolutely,
pro team
I
and there's
agree
no
there.
college team.
Okay, Steve.
But anyway, people can believe what they want to believe, but top to bottom, by any measuring stick in football, I can't. The Big Ten schedule is pretty soft. I mean, and I didn't even mention Nebraska. And I mean, when has Nebraska won since they've been,
Nothing.
since we're in the old
Since Tom Osborne,
whatever it was.
Well,
Yeah.
I always blame that on the University of Miami because until the University of Miami showed up, they used to be able to get kids from all over the world to go to the middle of America for nothing. And then Schnellenberger was like, "Don't you want to go to the beach?" And ever since he showed everybody the beach, nobody went back to Nebraska.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's all I got. I mean, who's going to win this time of the year? It's, the good thing is everybody's undefeated. Even Georgia Tech is undefeated. So that's what makes it fun.
Not for long.
But I can't see Kansas and Wisconsin in the playoffs. I'm just sorry.
Come on, don't be dampering
That's
on
all right.
Chuck's dream.
That's all right. I'm not writing down the Kansas. I said a long shot, but a dark horse. But I'll say Wisconsin.
They
Wisconsin's
would
going to win
be
the
a
West.
long shot. They would be a really long shot to go 500.
Ben Affleck and Matt Damon would make a movie of
Hey,
that next year if
Steve,
that happened.
They would.
Steve,
They
I'll make a bet with you right now. If Kansas breaks 500 when the season's over, you have to pay my next poker buy-in, and I'll do the same.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
that's a deal.
Break
All right, buddy.
500.
Easy
meaning they're-
money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to call my financial advisor and tell him I'm $10 richer already.
All right. Well, I appreciate you
See ya.
trying to put a point. We'll talk to you later.
Okay,
All right,
bye-bye.
bye-bye.
See you, buddy.
That's funny. All right. We haven't gotten to the Heisman yet.
No, we haven't. And I did want to say one thing about, talking about all of these mega conferences. Do you think there's a chance that because there are so many teams in just a few conferences that at some point in time conferences go away? Do you think the moves of California teams to the Great Lakes and West Virginia out to the Midwest, that at some point in time, this is going to cancel out some of that other stuff?
I don't see that going away, but what I might see going away is the NCAA. And just two separate divisions again. The Power 3, as we'll call it. I'd like to say 4 because, I don't think the ACC is going anywhere. And then the rest of the teams. I mean, that might be.
Could you see something kind of like pro football where you got the AFC
No.
and the NFC
I don't-
and
No.
kind of split it down the
I don't
middle?
think you do it like that, but I think at some point in time with these mega conferences, if they keep adding teams and if the Big
Yeah.
Ten and the ACC and the SEC all have 20 teams in a couple of years,
There's 55 teams left.
and, so at some point in time, I think you just put them all in there, and there's no conference. It's just kind of a round robin.
It's just like the NFL versus the USFL. It's
Yeah,
two different
pretty
leagues.
much.
It's two different things, and then at the end of the day, you bring relegation into it. I'm all about relegation here on this show, but
Can we use big words like that on this show?
Yeah, relegation is good.
So if Purdue is the worst team, well then guess what? Purdue's getting dropped down, and maybe the UConn football team gets
Yeah.
bumped up or something. Because
Okay.
That would be fun to watch. I mean, that's been a big debate this year, starting.
I think
with
Kansas
most
would
of
get pushed down.
I
And
agree.
again,
Anyway.
this is what makes college
But
football
but
good.
I think that's been a big talk with all the media days going on. Is that going to happen where there's going to be no conferences and you're just going to have a super conference, two or three of them? And because I know the SEC has been all but giving Clemson money to come to the SEC.
It's not
to create
happening.
That, but
It's not happening.
But
They won't because they know they won't win it.
They
like
can't
they do
because
in
they're under
ACC.
the grants of right till 2036.
I understand that, but they are not going to leave the ACC because they wouldn't win every game.
It's been 16 years since the Texas Longhorns won the national title. In those 16 years, the SEC has won 12 national titles. If they were able to add Clemson, they'd go at
Oh, yeah.
14 out of 16.
Yeah.
I mean, guess what? I'll trade Vanderbilt, move them to the ACC, and we'll take Clemson. I think that would work.
I think you're going to have to make it a sweeter deal. You're going to have to say Vandy, Missouri,
I'll tell you
and
what.
those Mississippi schools.
I'll give them back South Carolina and Vanderbilt, and I'll take Clemson.
Well, we
That
shall
might
see.
work.
So we're down to 5
And you
minutes.
know what? South Carolina may win another ACC championship if that was to happen.
And Georgia Tech might win another SEC thing if pigs fly. So we got 5 minutes to talk about the Heisman. So let's do that real quick. Front runner for the Heisman, and we'll get into it again in a couple of weeks.
Bryce Young.
Bryce Young.
Best player returning on the best team. You might not know who his weapons are, but you've seen this story play out for the last 16 years. I'm going with him.
Bryce Young. Can I disagree with you?
You often do.
Okay. I think if he doesn't get hurt,
Sure.
he's got a shot. But I tell you this much. I'm going to give you two players other than Bryce Young. I think Will Anderson should have been in New York last year.
It's
and
just
I think
so hard on a defensive guy
I
to
think
win
he's
it.
going to be the next Heisman winner that's on defense since Charles Woodson, the last
Charles-
defensive player to win.
Correct.
But
That keep in mind, and not to interrupt you, but keep in mind that defensive guy was scoring a lot of touchdowns, returning kicks and kickoffs,
Yeah.
punts. So
well,
not quite the same.
But Aiden Hutchinson didn't either. He was a rusher.
Aiden didn't win it.
And yeah, but he was 2 or 3. He was up there in he was in New York where Will Anderson should have been. My opinion.
I agree.
Sack leader, 18.5 sack, 73 quarterback rushes. He should have been in New York.
I'm not in disagreement that Will Smith might be the best player in college
or
football next year.
Will Anderson.
Yeah. Well, any
Will
of
Smith's
those-
a great actor,
Will
yeah.
Smith, anybody named Will is probably awesome, but he's not going to win the Heisman.
Well-
Can I disagree with both of you?
Yeah, but let
That
me give
usually
you
happens.
let me give you my backup first. All right, Braylon Allen, for the sophomore at Wisconsin. If he runs for 2,000 yards, he becomes a candidate immediately. I'll leave it at that.
I'm going to disagree with both of you. I'm going to go with.
Let me guess. Stetson Bennett.
I'm going to go with Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee. I mean, I'm just kidding. I'm not going with Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee. I'm going with Ohio State guy, C.J. Stroud.
C.J. Stroud?
I think to me, after losing to Michigan, it really affected that coach, and that's not ever going to happen again. That's why the Michigan coach, Mr. Harbaugh, and his khakis are going to leave in 2 years. But I would not be surprised if you don't see C.J. Stroud come on and actually just light it up at Ohio State, because, they always tend to get athletes just like Alabama. They end up, like you say, losing that one game that kills them. But I don't think they're going to do this year. I think you may see C.J. Stroud go look at, and I mean,
he's actually the front runner right now.
He is the front runner,
people are predicting a Georgia-Alabama national championship. I actually think it's going to be Ohio State and Alabama, and I think Ohio State's going to beat them.
Most of the people who are predicting that live in Powder Springs,
Right.
so
Right.
that's a little bit.
I think Alabama and Ohio State too, and Alabama
Yeah.
win. So.
The other guy, as far as dark horses, and once again, these aren't dark horses. We're naming the top 10 guys, but DJ out of Clemson.
Really?
Here's once again a guy who gave you a few games. He got his feet wet, and then last year did not go so well for him. But back to the whole thing, it's Dabo. Dabo has faith in his system. I think he's going to look good, and he's not. It's not the best conference top to bottom, so it doesn't hurt playing some.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
you sound like this guy sitting to the left of me or right of me, whatever this.
Let him
is.
know. Help Rusty.
I mean, he winning the dark horse Heisman's about like Kansas winning. Not happening. Not
That's
happening.
the craziest thing I ever heard.
DJ is not happening. He's going to have another bad year.
Write it down. Okay. The other Heisman hopefuls that I saw that we didn't talk about were Caleb Williams
Huge,
at USC.
and he's following him out there, and
And Rusty talks about how bad Texas is going to be, but they got a quarterback that transferred from Ohio State, Quinn Ewers, and running back Rajon Robinson. Texas is going to be a pretty good ball club this year. I think Sarkisian will get it second year. And the other one that they mentioned that we didn't, we talked about him earlier in the show, was Tyler Van Dyke.
well, and the one thing I learned back from when I was more of a degenerate, Vegas knows everything, and so when you look at the top 10 for Heisman odds, and you see that Texas has the number 4 and number 5 guy, and you think, how is that possible? Well, it's real easy, because Texas has a lot of money to spend, and that's why Vegas put them on 4th
Right.
and 5th on that list.
Absolutely.
They want that money.
Well,
Is Gabby going to join us?
See, I'm surprised Texas and all of them hadn't done the NIL any better than they have. I mean, my goodness. I mean, you got the Texas oil men. I mean, they've been spending money even when it was illegal. They were buying players.
I had
we know that.
people telling me when I was 6 years old, well, you don't understand this, but Texas got enough money, they'll do whatever the hell they want to. So
I mean, that's why the Southwest Conference is not here anymore, because they spent money like the NIL is today.
Yeah. All right. So, guys, as you can tell, there are 3 guys sitting at this table that are very passionate about college football. So we'll be talking a lot of football going forward, and we'll sneak in Robert's
ramblings.
about
Well, I'm glad we
baseball
talked a
and his
little
players
baseball.
of the week. I was very happy to hear about Joe DiMaggio. But, hey, we want to reach out to you again, and don't forget, we are going to have a fantasy football league, and if you want to be in our fantasy football league, you need to text FANTASY. That's FANTASY. FANTASY to 470-7-SPORTS, 470-777-6787. And if you want to be on Three Guys Who Love Sports when we move up to Miller's Ale House in 2 weeks, we would love to have you. Cost you $100. We'll give $75 of that to Helping One Guy, an organization to help men who are going through cancer and help pay their bills. You can text the number 1 to 470-777-6787. Same place.
I heard our producer Larry was thinking about taking Jimmy Garoppolo with his number 1 pick.
It's better than taking Matt Kofer, like a guy
would be better.
took a kicker in the league. So guys, thanks for being on. Rusty, always good to have you. Robert, as always, guys, know your numbers, cover your ass, get your prostate checked. See you next week.
Good to see you.
See you later.
Kansas? He can tell me anything besides Kansas.
They couldn't.
I think
They couldn't even win with the Mad Hatter for.
I think Ball State might be really good this year.
Hey, Slippery Rock.